If you've been there yourself, you know. If you're adjacent to someone who is in the application process, you know. Even if you just walk through campus right now on any given day, it is a very difficult time. Meaning, most of these kids have applied but may not even have heard from a single school yet. They don't know where they're going. If they do, by all means, and a parent wants to share, that is fine. But this process is irrespective of where you've applied. It really is a process. And you guys are gonna have some tips, you're gonna have some, I wish I would have done this differently, I wish I would have started this sooner or later, and that's what we really wanna hear. So we're open to those questions, but we're just gonna be respectful of the where question. So why don't we start down with Gerald, if you don't mind, and we'll ask you to just introduce yourself, tell us about your child, which theater program they're in, and if you feel like telling us how many you applied to, or then I'm gonna throw a little, I didn't prepare you guys for this, give us one word summary. I mean, you can go into detail later, but give us a one word summary of the process.
Hi, my name is Gerald Reed. My son is a senior. His name is John Ashton Reed. We applied to 25 schools for this process. What's the one word I would use to describe it? Emotional, probably is the word. I stand later on.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Joda Matthews, and my daughter Hayden is senior in MT, and we only applied to 17 schools. And I'll just say stressful, because we are just, stressed to the max.
I don't know if I'm going to get that one word. I'm Karen Kluffman. My daughter is Grace Kluffman. She is musical theater. She applied to 15 schools, but 19 programs. And I guess I'll explain that later, but there's acting and musical theater. So, and they're really treated separately. Oh yeah, the one word, I don't know. I mean, I'm super positive usually, so like, I mean, oh my gosh, I'm so totally on it. I guess just say positive, because yeah, a lot of good stuff. Positive experience.
You can already see the range
that way. I'm Melanie Moore. My daughter Mac graduated 2 years ago in MT, and I have a sophomore here now, Kenneth. She applied to 22 schools, not all of them musical theater, kind of, we're doing the scatter shot, trying little this, little of that. What was the next?
You can tell us where she ended up.
Oh yes, and she ended up at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, and she's in the musical theater program there and loving it. She has performed in just about every musical so far. I think there was one musical she hasn't been cast in so far, so it's been a fantastic experience. And the one word, chaotic.
2 years later, that's your word.
I tried to black it out, so you made me dredge up these memories.
But we wanted you here because you have perspective now too. And we thank you.
I'm Danielle Burke. My daughter Abigail Barak is in technical theater, and she applied to, in the end, 7 schools. So I would say, but I'll say organic. So it's been a very organic process.
I like that.
We'll get to hear more about that. All right, thank you. So would one of you be willing to walk us through the process, and then I'll ask Danielle to kind of add in some details and perspectives to tech, because it is different. But as far as the MTPT application process and how different it is from just the academic college application process, we'd love to get the nuts and bolts. Anyone willing to walk us through that?
I think it's different for everybody. That's why I think it's a little bit based on the schools.
Well, so you must do an academic app. Most of the time you need to have your academic app done prior to your artistic application. Sometimes you can wait to see whether you need to do your academic later, but most of the time, if you guys agree, your academic has to be done ahead or with. What you need for your artistic application is typically what we call pre-screens. Here at Douglas Anderson, Mr. Kemper schedules a videographer, or the booster schedule a videographer to come in and do pre-screens here at school, but it's not until mid to end of September. So a tip I will say is if your child's going to apply to some schools that may have early action or try to attend something like Pittsburgh Unifieds, you may need to find a way to film pre-screens sooner because that's too late for certain things. For instance, Elon has an early round of pre-screen reviews and the September date was too late.
Is this for your senior year or junior year?
For-
Your senior year?
This is
Okay.
for senior year,
Okay.
the
So you're
summer
saying do it-
before your senior year.
Okay.
So once you have your pre-screens in hand, then you do artistic applications, and most of the schools use a app called Accepted, or Get Accepted they call it. It's a place where you can load in your pre-screens. Not all schools use it, but the majority do. Then your pre-screens are sent off and reviewed, and then you're notified whether you pass a pre-screen or not. I'll share, of the 17 schools we applied to, we passed 15 of the 17 pre-screens. So that means that she was able to audition for 15 programs.
You send that along with your application?
You do academic down one track and artistic down another track.
Okay.
So what's the Common App? Is that?
The Common App is academic.
Is that the
Yeah.
That's
And there's
just the
only
gate
so many
entry into all of
accepted,
this.
right?
And you got-
Yeah, I was gonna say, in
There's a-
accepted, is
there's
it
a number,
20?
No, in the Common App, there's only 20.
Not
Common App?
Are you
Coming
saying
up,
an
not
app
the
like on your
accepted.
phone, or are you abbreviating application?
It's called
I
the
know, but
Common
is
App.
accepted, is there a limited?
It's on the
It's called,
computer.
it's the Common Application. So, and that would be whether your child was going for musical theater or anything else. Most of the colleges have gotten together and said, we're gonna make this Common Application thing that you just have to technically fill out once. But really, the only thing you're filling out once is like your personal data. And
Right.
then you upload your essay, you say you're getting your transcripts, you have to do it, put the information in there for your school counselor, all that stuff. And then you can list the 20 schools that you're applying to. And for most kids, 20 schools is enough.
Oh, I see.
Unless-
And then you can hit submit and it goes to those 20 schools.
Oh, that makes
Okay?
sense.
But they only allow 20. Once you've used it, you can't take one down and fill it. Only 20.
So here's another tip. When you're working your school list, see if the school takes applications directly through their own portal or
So
their
you don't have
own
to use one of
website.
the 20.
Yes.
Correct.
And by the way, some
Gotta be
schools
careful.
do not participate in Common App.
Right.
You
Correct.
have to go
Right.
to the website to apply.
Yeah.
Right.
For instance, Baldwin Wallace you could take an application directly into Baldwin Wallace. So Hayden had a list of, I'm gonna put these 12 on Common App and these 5 I'm gonna apply directly to the school. And that left her room on the Common App. If she wanted to add schools later on, she could add them.
Is that something that they help the kids with here, like during class, or is that something you do on your own?
The counselors try to do a boot camp, but for my child, it was never convenient. She was in rehearsal, she was doing this, she was doing that. You know, it was never convenient to do it. So my child did it basically on her own.
There will be a
Mine did
junior,
boot
there's a
camp.
junior year, before we break for summer, a college camp out, they call it. The school counselors hold it in the spring. So it'll be like in May, when people are thinking about testing, but if you can encourage a junior to go, just because it's gonna get real busy in the fall. as
And,
Sarah said.
and that's like when we were out of Plaza Woods.
Yeah.
So my child was never participating because she was out of Plaza Woods.
Yes, we were, that's the same with us.
So it says that, so hopefully, maybe it'll come to me. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, go ahead and get familiar with these programs now. I would say get on, get accepted, take a look at it, be familiar with how you upload things, go ahead and look at the Common App, get familiar with how you fill it all out, because you're gonna be under the gun when it's fall of senior year. Also, if you're not familiar with Excel, learn it because you're going to want to keep spreadsheets. I mean, my spreadsheet was massive. Yeah,
When would you guys recommend starting? Like
summer
summer of what?
before senior year.
Well-
So
And
even for
The
technical.
essay, Common App essay prompt is out there now for next year, so your student can find the Common App essay prompt now and start thinking about what essay they're gonna use for their academic app. But as soon as summer starts, I mean, have them write their essay, have them start their list. We personally used a coach for helping us make our list.
For your college list, I was gonna ask that.
Yes.
Okay.
Hayden has analysis paralysis and I wasn't gonna do that for her. So
It's awesome.
I hired a coach specifically to help with the college list. She provided a questionnaire to Hayden, like how many kids do you wanna how many kids in a college? Do you want this or that or whatever? Hayden answered this 10-page questionnaire and this college coach came back with a list of, I'll say, 50 schools. And she provided a lot of information, cost, GPA, test scores, links to tours. I mean, for my family, it was worth it because I wasn't gonna do it. It was too overwhelming for her. And then we took that list and narrowed it down.
Did you start touring any of the schools at that point, or did you wait to see if you even passed pre-screens or?
That's a good question. That's a tough question too.
Well,
No, I just think it's what you're comfortable with. For our family, we didn't want to tour necessarily because sometimes you can tour. That's one of my things I'll talk about later is maybe trying to not fall in love with one specific program because they do it and sometimes it's just organic and you can't help it and they love it, love it, love it. It just sets you up for a little bit of difficulty and perhaps some heartbreak. So we don't really tour the Florida schools. We've been touring. I have an older kid though, so we kind of tour. But some of the out-of-state ones, we're really holding off on touring until some pre-screens. And even now, like, it's then once you get some offers, if you haven't seen that school yet, it's like, well, now I think I need to go see that school, and we have like a month to figure it out. So that's a tough question. I might say, if you really are interested in it, go tour it, but also keep in mind not falling in love with something.
Gerald, did you want to add something?
Well, my question, we probably did a combination. When you say when you start this process, I would probably say we felt like we didn't know anything, okay?
Right.
We have older kids, older girls to a STEM. So the whole STEM, academic, getting in, qualifications, ACT, SAT, knew all that process. But for us, we didn't know anything about a BFA. What was that required, and just two different approaches. I have to say that John Ashton, and then talking to people, found out about different things. So I would say for us, would you say it was probably going to his junior year, this whole process kind of began to develop. He wanted to go to a summer intensive going to his junior year. And I would probably say, we could say this now, that was probably the best money we spent for that 3 weeks. I complained when he told me how much it was. I complained because it was a lot of money and we could have almost paid for a semester, half a semester for one of the other kids to school. But we made the investment, and we go back and say that was the best investment we made.
You did that the summer before junior year? Or
Yes,
what was
he
that?
went to a summer intensive going to his junior year, and when he came back, he knew at that point he was musical theater only. He was not doing acting anymore. Dropped him off, we thought he was acting because all his life that's all it had ever been was acting. But we picked him up. He said he was musical theater only from that point forward. And then what happened, we happened to be going to New York after we picked him up for his birthday. We ended up going to Juilliard and NYU because we were in New York and another school. Well, that opened our eyes because we didn't know there was a difference between a conservatory and a general college. So we had no clue. So that opened our eyes. And when Juilliard said certain things, my beautiful wife raised her hand to clarify what kind of academic classes they had to take. Because for us, it has been all academics. And when you get there, there's not. So it created a conversation among the three of us about what kind of experience are you looking for in college. But the question I asked him was, what if you changed your mind and decided you didn't want to do this anymore? What would you want to do? And what he came back with was say, okay, maybe we shouldn't be looking at conservatories, because then that would bite off something else that we would have to do later on. So we started asking questions and talking about it, but I would probably say last January, and we went to Moonifies. So John Ashton talking to somebody, learned about Moonifies Junior. We made the investment and went to Dallas. And like me, I was going to Dallas. We took him. I thought I was dropping him off. I was hanging out with my friends in Dallas. I'm call everybody. I'm having a good time. We were in class from 8 a.m. to 11 o'clock. But we learned a lot at that point. And so I think last January, we put together a plan for the next 18 months. What did that look like? What did his, coming up to his summer for his senior year, what that looked like? What did the application process? We decided to hire a coach, because if we don't run a business, it will overwhelm it. I couldn't understand what a pre-screen was. I could understand what some other stuff I kept asking because it didn't make sense to me. They give it all to you in a fire hose, but I couldn't conceptualize it until you're in it. So, we got with a coach, and it kind of helped us to get organized. They assessed him. What else they did to him? They assessed him. So when they assessed him, it gave us feedback on certain things I think we kind of knew, but we needed to change. And kind of from that, so we kind of started shaping a few things. And so, for us, that's what worked for us, what worked for our family, just kind of to get our arms around it, because I don't think we could have done it any other way. And he's a good kid. I mean, he drives it. So for us, what can we do to help him? I think we don't follow in his emails and all this stuff. We just ask him, what do you need our help with? What do we need to do? And, we started having weekly meetings to just say, where are we at? Where are we going on Sunday at a certain time? We would meet, we would talk, what do we need to do? What's coming up? What money needs to be spent? Where do we need to be? And we just kind of broke it down, and she joined MT Parents on Facebook or something. She joined that.
Be on it now.
But that would just give it another insight. So.
When you say summer intensive, is that like at a specific school? What is that?
John Ashton went to 3 summer intensives over 2 summers. He going to his junior year. He went to University of North Carolina School of the Arts. So he went there going to his junior year. Then during his junior year, he decided he wanted to go to 2 his senior year, going to his senior year. And so he ended up going to, is it Nexus? Texas State and in the Muni.
Do they just give you like a little taste of what it is to live at the school and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that was good because he's the only boy and he's the baby. So it was good for him at North Carolina. He was roommates with 3 other boys from around the country, and that was a good experience for him having a roommate. At Texas State, he only had 1 roommate that was from some other place, and when he was at Muni, he had a room to himself. So it kind of prepared him for kind of a roommate situation, get along with others and other stuff.
Is it true some of the pre-screens, some of the summer intensives will count as a pre-screen?
Yeah, so there's several that allow. Florida State was one. My daughter did Florida State, and that was she automatically passed 3 screens for doing that summer program. And a lot of them, and I don't know if that's true of the ones John Ashton went to, but a lot of them will help prepare your pre-screen materials. That's what they did at Florida State. They would have them. They really narrowed down like what your material should be, and that was how my daughter picked one of her audition pieces.
So real quick, we have tech parents in the audience. I would love to hear from Danielle on process and We probably have our own panel for tech parents another time, but if you could kind of shed some light on what the process was like.
Sure. We started, and my daughter is actually here, so if I'm not correct, let me know. So we started actually junior year because we needed to make sure that her SAT scores or ACT scores or CLT scores, we just tried them all, trying to get as much of for bright futures as possible, and get it out of the way before the end of the year of junior year happened, so that she could do that boot camp, for the essay at the end of the year before summer started. And then once summer started, it was researching the different colleges, their BFA programs, and what technical tracks they have, analyzing the conservatory environment versus the other, having conversations about, well, just like, what if you change your mind, or if you want to use your BFA to start your own business, what do you want to have to augment that, and will that university or college allow you for those courses in addition to whatever track there is for, and there's so much variety of what the technical theater programs are from institution to institution. So spending that time during the summer, in addition to researching colleges, is getting that Common App done, get the essay done, get all done, because in addition to that, instead of these summer intensives, they're doing a portfolio. And they have to pull all their pictures together, all of their everything together. Every place that they would apply to will ask for the portfolio. That's their pre-screen. By their deadline, they want to see this portfolio. It's a digital portfolio, and it determines whether they're going to be called back for a personal interview. And some of those are in person, and some of those are virtual. It can be negotiated in some schools, but also during the summer, here these children, at least mine, I'm like, I thought it would be good to go see some of these in person, because you've never been to a college campus before, except you have, right? So they're all so different. I want to see where this is. I want to see what the city is like. I want to see what the surrounding area is. I want to see if you need a car. I want to see if you need, I know everything that comes in from these. They're selling it to you. They want you to go there. They want your money, and they want, they want the prestige of your kid going there and graduating there. So seeing some things in a variety of different types of campuses, I found was extremely beneficial in helping her decide which colleges she wanted to apply to. Now we would sign up for tours. So we did 3 in Florida, and then we took a 2-week road trip and did 3 or 4 more going up to New York. But anything outside of that East Coast area, I said, if you get accepted, fine, then maybe we'll go visit. But it wasn't, practical. So, so we had this list of the 20, and then as time went on, this is why I said it was organic. It's like, well, it took a little bit more time to do the portfolio, or it took a little bit more time to do the essay. So now these deadlines are coming up to apply to these colleges, and do you want early action, or do you want early decision, or do you want regular decision, and which one are you going to do, and what are those deadlines, and keeping track of them, hence the spreadsheets, right? And then, and what you could get done. Your dreams, your intentions are larger maybe than what time availability you have. So then it was selecting which are your top ones now that you've done your research on what programs there are. But then you get, past the summer, and it's now, for us, financial aid, right? So we already know what we might fit for the bright futures, but in addition to FAFSA, there's CSS. Depending on which school you're applying to, you need to fill out pretty much both, because some will use both, some will use one or the other. And getting that information in early, I don't know, I read so many different things that it could impact, what you're for, what time of year you do it, whatever. I just wanted it out of the way so that it wasn't gonna hold up any of her submissions, her applications to these colleges, if it was one of their things on their checklist. So got that done. And then there was the very unusual receipt of whether someone was accepted academically, or they accepted artistically, and how that came together. And we heard from, of the 7, we heard from 1 for both academic and at this point in time. We heard from 3 academically only. One is deferred, and then the other 3 or 4 we're still waiting to hear, and we're being told March 14th. So, you know, we'll see what comes up. And then it's analyzing it more, you know, so once you get the offers, then the next step for us would be determining where the financial aid is coming from, and which one is giving the best package, and which one you're going to negotiate with, and go on from there. Does that help? That's
great.
Okay.
More questions about process.
Yeah.
Kind of. So for, what is the difference between early action and like what would make you want to do one over the
Drove
other?
me nuts because it didn't click in my head, and I had to keep getting corrected by my student. So early action, I believe, is when you want to put just that one school. Like you're saying, right? Is that right? Did I get it right? It's the other way around? Okay, here we go. I always get it
And
wrong.
this is true for all, this is academic arts area at all.
There's early decision, early action, and regular decision. Early decision is when you want to like commit to that school, and you will apply early and say, if I get in, I'm going to the school. You have my commitment, and this is my top school.
And you're done.
I'm gonna get here. I'm gonna go here if I get it.
Okay, I'm making my decision early.
So you can only do that for one school?
It's you can do it for multiple. It's recommended only for one.
Like you're like,
Why are you legally bound to?
let her get to the other one, it'll make more sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's talking about just the one where you're like, I only want to go to UF.
And if I get in,
I'm
I'm
done.
going to.
Let her go to the next one.
Early action is you're just applying early. You're not committing there, but you want to get your application in early and hear back earlier so you can make your decision.
And usually those are for at that time, the top schools. Now, what her top 3 were changed significantly throughout the year. You know, after we went to visit the campus, or after, you know, she had her interview, I really got along better with the people. You know, I liked this program a lot better. I found out a lot more information. And so something that was at the top initially is now like 4th or 5th. And something that was 4th or 5th is now at the top. So as the student gets more information, and they're in their head starting to put together what direction do I want my future to take, then which school they're aiming for.
And then certain schools don't offer early action.
Like what?
So you either have early decision and they'll do 2 different dates, or they'll do regular decision, which is the non-committal application, but it happens later and you hear back later. So for out-of-state schools like Carnegie Mellon and NYU for me, they don't offer early action, so I had to apply regular decision in order to not commit.
Right.
Would you have rather done early action?
100%.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
because with one of her schools, she did early action. Can I tell them which one? Okay, UF. So she did early action with UF, and she was deferred. She got an email back. You have a very strong application. We just only had a limited number of early action slots. You're still being considered, and you're being considered for regular decision. So the more you can get in by the deadline of early action, you could be
At the top, like.
right.
I want everyone to be cautious. Those are for strong academic students. They are judged harder in early action. If you do not have a strong academic student or borderline, you want to go regular. Trust me.
Yeah.
Also,
Okay, so like, we're talking like, the journey is different for everyone. So ask questions like, I have a 3.0 student, I have a 3.5, I have a 4.5 student. It's going to be different. So,
Very true.
it's also become a trend that you're recommended to apply early action, so more students apply early action, and it's a lot more flooded, and it takes a lot longer for schools, so less slots, more applicants, and that's also going to affect what happens. So it just depends on what you're looking for.
I want to add to that because there are some schools read what they recommend.
Right.
There's a few schools that specifically tell the students do not do early action. University of Michigan was one of them. So they have to read all the fine details. That's why she was talking spreadsheets. It's all about organization, because you don't want to do something. Also, I have a question about the early decision. Why would I caution on that? Because I know with my academic son, that made sense. Early decision, you want to lock in. But for us, we have academic is entirely separate. I'd hate for somebody to do that, get into a school academically, they're legally bound and then they don't get into the artistic program.
Well,
That's gotta be a
for
thing.
technical students who want to understand, like there might be some that are like, I just want to do wigs, or I just want to do whatever. And if that school happens to have that, then, but I don't know if it would apply, but yes, I mean.
Well, it only makes sense if you know for the fact. Like I think in our case, it did make sense
Right.
because you got to get accepted and you got to get accepted in the BFA. If you don't get accepted, if you don't get both, they're not in consideration.
Okay, that's.
And some of
in
them
our
work
household.
entirely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah, the
even
same.
communicate to each
Right.
other. So you can, let's say UF is a really difficult school, you get in academically, you're stoked, that's awesome. But then if you don't get into the program, it's
a no-go.
Sometimes they say no to the program, your kid is heartbroken, and a week or two later, they get a letter from the school, congratulations! And you're
Right.
like
You're gonna-
wanting to flip them off.
Yeah.
It doesn't-
Before we
it's not
go on to
good.
the next, I just wanted to tackle into that, but yes, but there's also another side to that. Because can I tell, with the University of Florida, she got deferred, then she had her interview and went there for that. And afterward, when she was sending her thank you letter, she said, by the way, I was deferred, and that department emailed her and said, I'm glad you let us know. We're going to contact the admissions office and let them know that, you've interviewed with us, that we're interested, we're very, and so there is some influence on that way.
There's a lot of influence. I was gonna tag on to that. Yeah, make sure that you communicate with the person in that department because they can perhaps make some changes in some of the schools.
Yeah, UF is
Some
kind of known
schools-
for that. UCF,
Well, they've
Will
also
not.
gotten into trouble with it, so I'm not sure.
oh really? They might not be doing
If
And
it.
there
if they get a kid in and then they can't keep up academically with that school's
Right.
standard though, that has bit them in the butt before.
Right.
So it's just open communication to let them know. So if you get into a school and you're really interested in the program, make sure you communicate with the person. You generally have the emails with the department and let them know, hey, I got into the school. And they
Right.
write back, they're like, all right, like that's a win for them too. Now they're not worrying about whether you're gonna get in.
And-
Some schools got smart, not all of them, but they do them together so that, and those are the good ones, like, and University of Michigan was one of them as well, I'm just using them
NYU.
as the example. Is that if you pass their pre-screen, you automatically were academically in. And that's how they all should work, but.
And there are
They
some
don't.
schools that will ask you when your child's auditioning, have you applied, have you been accepted? Because Hayden was asked a number of times, has she already applied, has she been accepted?
I want to talk about unifieds, munifieds, and I want to talk about college showcase. Make sure that we know the resources that are available.
Very good question.
Well, I was going to say something about a college showcase. I was going to give my little spiel real quick.
Yes.
I have a daughter who's doing the BFA process, not at DA, and I have a sophomore at DA. So I have gotten to see the difference of what a normal high school student who does not have the support system of DA is going through, and what DA offers to their kids. And I was going to say, College Showcase is like such a plus. It is worth coming here your senior year, even.
No, like,
Right?
I have no idea.
I'm for real. Because Kemper has done such a good job. He brings in a bunch of schools, and this is for all the arts. And basically, they get to do live pre-screens, and some of them are final auditions for a bunch of really good schools. And it is such a plus. Like, I can't even tell you how awesome it is. And like, he's looking to grow
really
that,
is amazing.
continue to grow that. But my other thing I was going to tell you is that this probably sounds all super, super overwhelming. The research, I was going to suggest there is a podcast called MTCA, Mapping the College Audition. And I basically, Lucy and I listened to anywhere she was interested in, they pretty much have a podcast for it with the head of the program. And it's like an interview, most of them are like an hour. And they're just so good. It talks about cost, it talks about, are you dance forward? Are you more acting? Are you, what's the culture? What would you say, like, a student, how would you describe a student on your campus? And like, that was the best, like, most personalized information I could get about schools. So like, I highly recommend that.
I have to leave. I just want to give 2 tips to help you guys. Number 1,
The Get Accepted website is where you're supposed to upload your pre-screens and all the schools get it from there. Fun tip, I only had to do it for 2 schools. You have to pay every time you do it. For other 17 schools, I did it right on their website, it was free. Save some money. Get Accepted only if they require it, okay? My last tip was, there's this saying, cast a wide net. Those of us living in this right now are learning what that means. If you only apply to 6 top 10 schools, you may find yourself very disappointed. Cast a wide net. There are hundreds of amazing programs. Pick programs in all tiers, maybe not the bottom. You know, maybe like top 50 programs, pick some that are not as well heard of, do your research, listen to Casey's podcast. Cast a wide net is a real thing. I do have to go pick up my daughter.
Okay, thank you. College Showcase, I'm sorry, really quick.
Hi, everybody.
So if you have a technical student and they see all of these tables and College Showcase and they're going, but that's for music and that's for musical theater and that's for theater, where's the ones for technical, right? There is less representation for that. I'm hoping, that in the future, when they're lining up these colleges, that we do have a strong tech program. Could you send a tech representative? But until that kind of starts to happen, we found success in going to these tables and saying, I'm a technical theater student. Who can I talk to? Who is it that I call when I'm there? Is there anyone, ask the faculty, or any of these schools here have somebody that would bridge the technical theater that can come see my display in the shop or in the design lab or wherever, and start to make those connections so that they've got your name. I think that's how she got into UWF, was because they were here and they were watching DA. So for tech students, it is still possible to be able to get kind of past that pre-screening area.
You're talking about the college fair, going from table to table?
College Showcase, yes.
Yeah, the week of College Showcase where we bring in representatives, there is also, not separate, but sort of separately organized in the gym for families in the evening and for the students during lunch and learn to go from table to table. Different schools, not specific to theater. Some of them are, but some, as you're saying.
Right,
yeah, it's
right.
separate.
So they have to be a little bit more proactive. It's not as programmed, for the students as it is maybe for the other art branches of the theater department. And the second thing is that Facebook group that is there for music. There's one for technical, and it was incredibly helpful, especially with giving a heads up of what kind of interview questions might be asked, or what questions the student can ask, or what is the process. But anything that you had a question about, they had in their resources to be able to check. So it's also
called like tech theater parents. High school to
college, right. So that was all I wanted to say. So
okay.
there are.
Thank you. So Unified, does anyone want Unified's broken down? Do you have to go through this, or do we know what it is?
I would suggest, we did not look at or participate in any, but I've heard really good feedback from the Pittsburgh Unifieds. In prior years, it has competed against College Showcase, but I think this coming year, College Showcase is going to be a little bit later. So if you have a theater, acting, or musical theater, I would encourage you to look into what's called Pittsburgh Unifieds. And, I've heard good things about it, but we did not participate.
We participated in Munifieds, and we made that decision, as a family. Was it his voice coach introduced us to it like at the somewhere sophomore, must have been middle of his sophomore year, and we went to junior Munifieds the first year. And after we went, we got an opportunity to walk through the whole audition process from beginning to end and see it taking place his junior year. And so we decided to go through that process ourselves his senior year. And we looked at the Pittsburgh one as well, but we decided to do the Munified one because it was November. It gave us more time to get the pre-screens, all that other stuff together. The school, we looked at the school calendar, what plays were going on, what we possibly in, how would you work that? So we looked at that and we decided to do that. And what that allowed him to do, I think of the 25 schools, 17 of them was done over 4 days. Done that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and that Sunday. And
Saves
it
you
was more-
time, it saves you travel.
It saved
from all
time,
these
it
schools,
saved
they just all
travel,
come to one
you
place.
got to talk with the schools, there was one dance call, and just our thoughts, we did not want Unified New York to be his first time going in front of a school.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask, what's
So-
the difference between Pittsburgh and
Unified and
So Pittsburgh Unified is put on by a group of women. No, I think it's a group of
It's
women.
the MT parents.
It's women who went through this process with their students, and they decided that there needed to be something different. So there's, it's called Pittsburgh Unified. You can Google it and find it. It's
Early October, late
It's-
September, or something
yeah,
like that.
it's typically when our college showcase was, but we use college showcase as our prep for auditions before we went to New York. But I think Reagan Thomas went to Pittsburgh Unified this past year, so you might, if you know Sherelle, you might be able to speak to her. But it's just put on, it's not a unified sanctioned audition. So Moonifieds is through a company, right?
Yes.
Musical-
College audition
College
coach.
audition coach.
And there, we compared, and it was about a 70% overlap between who was at Pittsburgh and who was at the Unified. So if you do one early October or something like that, one the weekend before Thanksgiving. And so we just chose based on our experience and timing, what's going on at school, that the one before Thanksgiving was better for us. And we looked at that as really kicking off our college audition, because at that point you already, can do regular admission, you can already do your pre-screen, you can already submit, because many of these schools, he already had to send his pre-screens and already have had to apply and some other stuff.
And then you have the regular unifieds that New York and Chicago and Los Angeles.
Mhm.
That is through a consortium of schools make up those three locations. Mr. Kemper always takes a group to New York. It's kind of like a senior trip thing, but
You're on your own.
you're on your own, but Mr. Kemper goes as well. And then there's also Chicago. It's typically like the week after New York, and then there's Los Angeles the week after that. So it's three. And again, what it is putting a lot of schools together so that you only have to travel, one time or maybe two times. For instance, we did 6 auditions in New York. We did 9 in Chicago. We ended up going to both. My child's not one to do 5 in one day, so 2 or 3 a day was best for my child, especially if you have an audition and a dance call. So, we had to space it out, so we ended up going to both New York and Chicago.
What's the difference between the musical and performance theater? Is that the same thing? Do they still have to do all that?
They pretty much, for acting, they pretty much still have to do pre-screens and go to a Unifieds to do a final audition. Both, they were auditioning both acting and musical theater in New York and Chicago, and I think Pittsburgh and probably,
There's not as many categories.
You just wouldn't have a dance audition.
yeah,
I
they
think
would
there's
have a
one
dance.
dance.
But
There's
they
one
usually
dance called-
concentrate more on like the monologues.
In Monified, there was one dance call, and is it one dance call
It's a
in Pittsburgh?
consortium.
It's sort of, yeah,
Dance
from that. But like I said, Johnson did 17 in Dallas, and then we do 4 to 6 or something in New York? 4 in New York, 1 Chicago, and he did 2 on campus or something like that. So,
Is the LA one a little more film based?
No, it's just more West Coast centric
Correct.
schools,
Mhm.
from what I understand.
and we saw a lot of people from LA and New York, and then we turned some the next week in Chicago, and then they were turning, and they were gonna do the one in LA. But when our process, we had decided that we weren't going to any schools beyond Texas, so I think that we took out the West Coast schools, so that didn't make sense for us.
Well, some schools only participate in certain ones. So as you're starting to formulate your schools, find out which school goes to which unified. The unifieds in New York,
So let's say if you went to New York and you didn't pass a pre-screen at one of your schools, but they're gonna be at Pittsburgh or Chicago, you do it again?
No, if
No.
you
No,
don't
you're
pass a
out.
pre-screen, you're out.
You're
But
out.
you can do walk-ins at schools you have not applied to.
Now Chicago's like 5 days though. So, but the school does go to New York and that's only 2 days. But it's a fun experience. So, but you can kind of pack a lot more into I didn't go to the Chicago one. We were going to, but then we canceled by putting this massive puzzle piece together that you all will be doing. And that's what it is. And it was like, well, if I drop that one, then we could go to this one. And you just, for me, my experience was budget centered. So Grace has never ever done a summer intensive. We don't have coaches. We've never have we done a summer thing at all. So ours was her doing all the work, and she did have to put in a lot of time. Luckily for me, she's super wildly organized. She could put down all the schools, all of the stuff that she needed to do. The biggest thing for us though is to make sure, like she said with the net, you want your top schools, you want your safety schools is what we're calling them, and then you want your Florida schools, your in-state schools, so that you know, because if you do all of the top schools, then it's like great, oh, you feel good, you passed a lot of pre-screens, but it's even harder at that next level. And some of these schools only take, 6 people, 16 people, and you're against amazing, our kids are amazingly talented. There's so much talent out there, it's crazy. And then when you get into that process, you're already past the pre-screens. They're kind of not even looking for talent. They said that so much. They're looking for the vibe, the personality. That's a big part.
So real quick, I wanted to tack on the tech stuff to this. So we talked about summer intensive, we talked about the unified and unified. I wish I had known before junior year that tech students can do summer intensives. There are summer intensives for tech students. I didn't know, by then it was too late, didn't budget for it, wasn't gonna happen. And then in this Facebook group that I've been in, I didn't realize there are certain categories in the unifieds and the unifieds of these colleges are there that can apply for technical students as well. I didn't do much research into it, but like I said, I was kind of late to the game in knowing that. But if spreading a wide net for technical theater is something you want to do, it might be worth looking into that. Though from what I've heard, this school is really unique in having a technical theater like arts area that anywhere that you apply as a BFA and you're saying DA and you're a technical theater student, you already kind of have a leg up because it's pretty rare to have had that kind of education in high school to get in. So
Thank you all so much. We have to wrap up. I will say our next booster meeting is 2 months away. It's in May, and it is a panel of kids who know where they are going. It is absolute proof. It's like popping the cork off all the tension. Okay, there's a lid for every pot. There's a home for every student. The kids up here will be many of your kids plus more. They'll speak a little bit more to their selection process, and it's just a beautiful thing. They're relaxed. Yeah. Different 2 months.
Feel free to reach out to any of us about, if you have specific questions or want any more detailed information. Like if you feel like you're going to go to Chicago, I have tidbits about Chicago that, I want to give you, like what floors to stay on, because the elevators are way up. Things like that. So,
Or anything else for hire.